All right, hello and welcome. This is the second of our Conductors Guild Google Hangouts. We're planning to have this be a series of different discussions about topics pertinent to conducting. And today we are joined by a group of college professors, two of whom are wind ensemble oriented and two are orchestral oriented to kind of give us a good breadth of discussion here. My name is John Devlin, and I am a member of the Conductors Guild Board of Directors. I'm located in Washington, D.C., where I'm the cover conductor for the National Symphony Orchestra, and I also serve as the assistant conductor for the Princeton Symphony Orchestra up in New Jersey. So I'm going to pass it off now to our four panelists who are going to introduce themselves, and we'll start, if you would, with Neal out in California.
Oh, very nice to be here. Thank you. I'm Neal Stulberg. I am a professor and director of orchestral studies here at the UCLA Music Department of the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music. I'm also, at the moment, the chair of the Department of Music and co-director of the School of Music.
Great, Emily?
Great. Yes, I'm happy to go next. Thank you. My name's Emily Threinen, and I'm the director of bands at Temple University. I am an assistant professor, and at Temple I oversee the entire band program, but my primary artistic role is with the Wind Symphony, and I have been here for 5 years. I am also, my title is Artistic Director of Winds and Brass, and I've been here, like I said, for 5 years. Prior to this position, I was at Shenandoah Conservatory for 3 years and Duke University for 1 year.
Hi, I'm Markand Thakar, and I am on the graduate conducting faculty at the Peabody Conservatory, and I also am music director of the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. Nice to be here.
Yes, and I'm Mark Scatterday. I am the conductor of the Eastman Wind Ensemble. I have been at the Eastman School for 14 years, and prior to that I was a professor at Cornell University for 13 years. And my primary job is to lead the Wind Ensemble program, both Wind Ensemble and Wind Orchestra at the Eastman School, and a professional group called the Eastman Harmonie and Eastman Virtuosi at the Eastman School.
Great. Well, thank you to all of you for those introductions and for your time with the Conductors Guild today. I'm going to start off by asking the first question. You've all touched a little bit about your trajectories, about how you got to your current positions, but I would like to ask that we delve a little further into that. Could you give us a little bit of context about how you arrived at the decision to pursue a career in academia, and a little bit about that trajectory that led you to the positions and strategies you might have developed along the way, perhaps unexpected ones that led you to success as program builders?
Are we proceeding in the same order, or?
Sure, that's a great way to start.
Okay. Well, I've been at UCLA since 2005. This is actually my first academic job. I was a music director of the New Mexico Symphony in the mid-'80s and early '90s, and assistant conductor of the LA Philharmonic before that, and was based in Europe in the mid-1990s and early 2000s as a guest conductor in various places. We came back to the U.S. In 2003. And we were able to come back to Los Angeles, which was kind of a home base for us in any case. And actually my involvement with UCLA began by being asked to teach a one-quarter graduate seminar for performers called Notation and Performance as a kind of a substitute for someone, and I thought that sounded like a fun idea, and I did. From that came a temporary appointment to direct the orchestra program for a couple of years for someone who was leaving for another position. And then after that they opened up the job as a latter faculty. We call it professorial position, and I applied for that, and so I've been here since then. As far as building the orchestral program, we have here, we're kind of a mid-sized department, and we have one orchestra for the music majors and one orchestra for the campus. The campus orchestra is conducted by my graduate students, and I'm in charge of the music major orchestras. In terms of that orchestra, the Philharmonia, we call it, the music majors. I, from the beginning, tried to make this program intensive, more intensive than it had been, to raise the stakes in many ways, in terms of amount of rehearsal time, in terms of frequency of performing. We are on the quarter system here at UCLA, and every quarter we perform 3 programs, which is quite a lot, actually. 10 weeks in a quarter. We have been able to reach out into the community, do very, I think, unusual festival-type programming. I don't want to go into the details because everybody should have a chance to speak, but we've made some commercial CDs of premiere recordings, works that have never been recorded. We've performed at Disney Hall and other places in town here. And in general, I think, through expecting a great deal from everyone, and also through working collaboratively with wonderful colleagues, have been able to establish the orchestra as a really fine training ensemble in Southern California with quite a reach beyond the university.
Well, I'll go next. So as I said before, I've been at Temple for 5 years, and then prior to that, Shenandoah, and then Duke University. And I would say, for me personally, I always had a dream to be a college band director, but I wasn't sure that that would happen just in my graduate studies. So I tried to be very optimistic, but I never knew if going to graduate school would lead me to this place. I started my career as a high school band director. My undergrad degree is in both performance and education, and being a high school band director would have been just fine, but I had the itch to be a more refined conductor, let's say, and go to graduate school. And then ever since then, since my graduate studies, I've been really lucky to have great jobs and to be, I guess you could say, successful in the job market. And the programs that I've inherited, Duke and then Shenandoah and now Temple, I feel like were programs that the person that preceded me was really different than me. And I think all of the hiring committees wanted to hire someone that was just almost radically different, just for change. So in a way, that was kind of a nice benefit, because they're, you know, the shoes that I had to fill were just very different shoes. In all 3 of the programs, they were very different kinds of programs. So when I went into them, instead of using a particular model and attaching it to that program, I just assessed where the program was at, and I thought, well, what can make this program stronger and maybe get it bigger on the map. So each program was very, very different, and I did very different things to kind of elevate the program or to just give it more prominence. At Temple, I would say the reputation was quite strong, but I think the person that was before me was there over 30 years, and I think a lot of people just didn't know what was going on at Temple. So I think the push for the last few years was to get it more of a sort of a national profile, the band program especially, by doing clinics, conferences. We have a recording project that's going to come out. It's a 2-year project of all wind concerti featuring members of the Philly Orchestra who are on our faculty. And so I think just getting the word out about what's going on campus has been a big priority and a big agenda for me and also for the program. Personally, I love to work with composers, and I bring those composers and guest conductors on campus so our students have an opportunity to work with just living artists that are writing music today. But I would say the biggest thing that I've tried to do, very similar to what Neal said, is in every program, assess where they're at and bring up the level of performance expectations, quality of performances, more performances, and then just trying to get, in whatever means possible, trying to get more attention. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's tours, just something to give more attention to the program and to the music making that's going on. So that's what I tried to do in all of my positions.
Well, I'll jump in. So I guess I have a little bit of an unusual path. I've always been a teacher. I guess I started my professional career. I spent 9 years conducting college-level orchestras and teaching conducting. I've always been focused on studying and learning. A huge influence in my life was the time that I spent with Celi Dake in Munich, and he opened a world of understanding for me that really this possibility of this extraordinary experience of beauty and how it comes about. So having that come about and sharing it and teaching it has been really a focus for me. So I started my professional career at 9 years at college-level orchestras, and then I had a period of time that I spent in the professional world. I was, for 5 years, an assistant with New York Philharmonic and music director in Duluth, Minnesota, a very fine regional orchestra, and music director of the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra, which is really a first-rate group. And for the last 20 years, I've been on the conducting faculty at Peabody. I don't conduct the orchestras there. My main function is training conductors, which has become, it's always been an interest, but it's become a real passion for me. Actually, I'm just putting the finishing touches on a book that's about to come out, University of Rochester Press, Mark.
Yeah.
And in terms of getting the word out, I think we've developed something of a reputation. I think it's largely been word of mouth, and I also do, of course, until this year, I shared the position with Gustav Meyer. This year, Maren Alsop has joined us as director of the conducting program. I personally run 2 annual conductor training programs with the chamber orchestra. John is actually a survivor of one of those programs, and we see 30-plus conductors a year. So that's, I think, been one thing that's been helpful in terms of getting the word out.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, I have to say that my background is, I grew up in a very musical family. My grandparents were both musical professional singers, and so I had that influence, and singing was everything. And I grew up as a pianist and a violist, and trombone was very, very late in my life. So the fact that I ended up being a wind conductor is a little unusual to my parents, but it was a path that was good for me, because that's what I look for in future conductors, is having all these elements of music that they've grown up with, and if they haven't, that they need to know, because I think singing and playing is everything, and that you don't leave that when you become a conductor. But I mean, I spent many years on the audition circuit trying to make it as a trombonist in professional orchestras. I won a couple jobs, but nothing that I would say that I could live on. And maybe waiting around for my teacher to retire from the Cleveland Orchestra, and that wasn't going to happen. So, but I had some great influences with at Michigan, for instance, and Bob Reynolds and Carl St. Clair, and at Eastman with David Efron and of course Donald Hunsberger, and these people really led me to believe that conducting is conducting and music is music, and you can make it in anything that you really want. So to me, the reason I found trombone at the end as being an instrument that was like more my personality, that's really what I wanted to embrace myself with, is wind music. So one of the challenges that I had in a program, my first program at Cornell, was I was actually conducting non-music majors. And these were very smart students, but they were pre-med, pre-law engineers. I mean, but they were very talented musicians, but not studying music for a career. And my charge there, in terms of how I was going to find a program for them, is my idea was they were going to be good artistic citizens of the world. So they were going to go out and have maybe their last musical experience was going to be with me, and how were they going to be to support the arts after that? Now, of course, at Eastman, it's almost the opposite. I'm training musicians to have professional musical careers. So what we try to do at Eastman, particularly in the Eastman Wind Ensemble program, is to always daily establish a professional model from day to day through what we do in terms of our rotations and our concerts and our rehearsals. But it also goes into recordings where we pay our players for their recordings. We pay them on tour. We've toured extensively in the United States and Japan, and we're about to do a tour in Europe this summer. And these students will have that professional experience. So that's how we run our program, is how can we give them the nearest possible professional model before they're going to go out there and actually be a professional. So it's a seamless kind of transition into that part of their career.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody. I think some really interesting thoughts generated by that part of the discussion. Next, this is the Conductors Guild after all, so we're speaking a lot here to conductors in our audience, many of whom are students in high school or college looking to apply for graduate level degrees, some master's, some doctoral. And in our preparation for this hangout, I received some questions from folks that asked me, hey, could you have them talk about what they're looking for in preparation for acceptance into one of these programs, what type of background, and Mark, you touched on this a little bit, are you expecting from a student at a master's level, at a doctoral level, and for people that eventually receive admission to your program, what do you see in the on-campus audition that makes you attracted to someone as a student? And maybe we can just go the same order, or Markand, okay. Please, take it off.
Okay. Okay. I think this is interesting because I find myself really focusing on one issue, and that is, does this person respond fully to sounds? Are they open to the sounds? Are the sounds working in them? Are they moved by the sounds? And that requires a certain level of, it does require a level of experience so that we no longer have to worry about thinking about what we're doing with our arms or our hands. I spend a lot of time watching a lot of different videotapes, and I find that's responding to sounds. Another issue I will say is know the score. There's someone who doesn't know the score, that's a huge negative.
Yes, and it's pretty obvious when they don't, right? Along those lines, I have to jump in because I love that idea, but almost kind of like on the other side, but it parallels this. I look for the conductor that's moving the sound. You see, I want to get an idea. Is that conductor, he or she, is it apparent that they're moving the sound, and is the sound in them? Can I tell that it's in there and they're expressing it out? So I mean that's so important to me.
Mark, let me just say that I think that's two different ways of saying the same thing.
Exactly. That's why, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, to piggyback on that, I would say I know that the music needs to live in the person, right? And I think there's something to say, something that I look for, and again, probably another way to say the same thing, is that the conductor has to feel like the sound lives in front of them and they're sculpting it and molding it. So again, same thing that those gentlemen said. But I also look for someone that has a pretty varied background, kind of like what Mark said, that I think it really shows that they're a varied musician, that they have something to add, that it's not just a band director or not just an orchestra conductor or a choir conductor, but that the person is comprehensive in their musicianship as much as possible. I think personally, at least in the wind ensemble world or the band world, if you want to put it that way, I do think the person has to have some sort of education. For me personally, some experience where they can say that taught or ran a high school program or a community program of some sort. I think when you take, let's say, an undergraduate straight out of a music performance degree and they just want to be a conductor because they love music, I think at least in the band realm and academic realm, if that person has no background teaching music at all, for me personally, I find that to be a little bit of a red flag, because there's just so much at stake at running a program, teaching, artistry, all of that stuff. So I think all of these things, we sort of a package is what I'm looking for. And lastly, I think someone that has a personality on the podium too. Someone that isn't, they may move well, they may feel the music well, but if they're kind of flat with their personality and doesn't really have sort of a point of view as a person and a human being, that's something that I look for as well. So a lot of different characteristics personally.
Well, I certainly agree with all of what's been said. I'm always very interested to know how a person actually makes music in their given medium before they work a conductor. You know, what's the music like that comes out of them actually? And so we ask our conducting applicants when they come to campus to demonstrate that. If they're instrumentalists or singers, if they're composers, of course that's a little bit of a different issue. But I do think that a certain mastery in making music that you can hear with your hands or your mouth or whatever it tells you a lot. I think a gift for leadership is, of course, very important. And I'm always looking for people with very kind of intense ideas about music, a kind of interpretive passion for what they do. It's important to me that a person physically have at least the foundations of a sound technique. In our case, I feel that the amount of time that I'm able to entrust a student conductor with an orchestra, and I hope that amount of time is very, very substantial, has to be to some extent dependent on what they can offer the orchestra, not just what they can take from the orchestra. They're actually in a supervisory role when they're conducting an orchestra, and the ensemble players are, you know, paying tuition. So that's always very, very helpful for me. Our opera program and our orchestral program are very tied together, so whenever somebody has kind of advanced keyboard skills and the ability to coach and accompany opera productions, that's very, very desirable for us.
Great, and you know, we've heard a lot about what you look for in kind of the overall package, and the beginning of that discussion centered around response to or contribution to the sound of the ensemble. One of the kind of nuts and bolts questions we get all the time is, what about that video? It's a big thing for everybody, and as the young conductor, often the type of video you submit is based on the advice you get from your best conducting friend that's gotten into a good program before. So from kind of the top people here, and I'm sure you're all very experienced at seeing lots and lots of videos, sometimes voluntarily and sometimes not, perhaps. What are qualities of good videos that you find desirable, meaning the actual construction of that video? Do you like a short clip that might begin right in the middle of a movement that shows somebody doing something fantastic, and then maybe some longer clips as you go to see a longer stretch of good conducting? Like, what are mistakes people make when they submit videos, things they think they should do that maybe they don't need to? What would you suggest to somebody that's looking to present themselves in the best way?
Well, I'm happy to start. You know, any audition process or interview process, everything that a candidate does is part of their part of the information that they give you that you have to evaluate. We have a little bit of an unusual situation in that I do not have in-person auditions in front of the orchestra. I have a kind of a different model. And so in fact, in this model, the video becomes extremely important. And we specify that the video has to contain at least 15 minutes of rehearsal footage and 15 minutes of performance footage. And I'll just quote from what we write to people on the FAQ page. Rehearsal video should include significant portions where the applicant stops and rehearses the ensemble, and should demonstrate how the applicant influences the musicians through both physical gesture and verbal communication. Run-throughs in rehearsal settings are not considered rehearsal video. And then obviously they have to be, framed up from the front so you can see the person. So I mean, I think the first thing I would say is please follow the directions that are given to you about what these should be like. As far as what I think a performance video should demonstrate, again, the choice that the candidate makes about what they think will represent them best is just part of the information that they're giving us, and so I mean I kind of leave that to them. I think often what can happen is that students don't have a whole lot of opportunities to work with great sounding ensembles, and so there's a question about whether they should present the video from the workshop in Europe where the orchestra sounds great and it doesn't really matter who's conducting, or where they're really intensively working with a group and one can see over a period of minutes how things get better. I mean, within limits, I feel that I can hear and see through flaws in the group. So, if someone can really demonstrate leadership skills that can make things better, I'm okay with flaws. I understand that. But just so everybody understands what my process is, after that video and an application submission, I tend to invite around 8, 10, 12 candidates to campus for essentially a 2-hour interview with me, at which they're asked, among other things, to prepare a choice of 2 Mozart symphonies, as they would prepare for a conducting opportunity with a fine orchestra, and to be prepared to come and talk about it and conduct it. I play it on the piano for them when they conduct, and that tends to lead to a very wide-ranging discussion about their musical profile, because if someone's going to come here for 2 or 3 years, we only have 2 people at any one time in our program. I want to know who they are, and I want to spend enough time to at least have a good idea of whether it's a good fit or not. In my experience, I have found that in-person auditions with orchestras that are brief and 10, 15 minutes can sometimes turn into uncomfortable situations for the applicant, where they have to kind of figure out how to play those circumstances, and it may not present them at their best. And so I'm happy if they submit the videos that they think represents. And I think with rehearsal and video and performance videos together, that I'm able to get a pretty good idea of what they can do in front of an orchestra.
I'm happy to go next. Mine's pretty short and sweet. And to piggyback a little bit on what Neal said, follow the instructions exactly as written. So if it says 10 minutes, only provide 10 minutes. If the camera angle needs to be in the front, make sure that you follow that. If possible, I think the candidate needs to work with the best possible ensemble. So even if you're working with, let's say, middle school band or high school orchestra, and you're not that thrilled about the quality of the ensemble, see if there's a group that you can work with. Whether it be a a workshop group or maybe a community ensemble, that's just a little bit better. But just try to find the best possible musicians you can to work with. I know myself, when I was an undergraduate and I was looking for graduate schools, I actually was teaching high school, and I had a great band, but they had some limitations. And one of the things that I did is I went back to my college and I hired 8 musicians, and we rehearsed the Stravinsky Octet, and we put that together as both rehearsal and performance footage, just to have that as an option. I would say that for the video itself, just brass tacks, make sure that when the video starts, that it's very simple introduction, that whether it's your name and the maybe the name, the ensemble, and the piece and clip. We don't need flashy intros with like wave-ins or anything like that. I would say just keep it very sweet and short and simple. Also be sure that the clip starts right away with the best possible conducting. I've seen some videos where the tuning pitch happens, or the person walks out and there's clapping, or just maybe 30 seconds of extra stuff that you just don't need. I think when the clip starts, make sure your hands come up and you conduct whatever it's going to be. I also think the Malcolm Gladwell Blink book is a really good kind of a good thing to read, or a book to read in lieu of this, because the first thing that we see, the first 10 seconds, 20 seconds, really needs to be the best possible clip that we can find, because people will stop watching after a certain amount of time if they're not engaged, or if they aren't immediately enraptured in what you're doing. And I think especially when you have 100 videos to look at, you're going to go through them quickly, so you want to be sure that that first 10, 20 seconds is the best possible thing that you can provide and present yourself with. Lastly, I would say that do everything you can to have a high quality or high definition video. It's easy for video qualities to get pixelated and so forth, so you want to try to make sure that your camera and the lighting is the best that you can make it be. So those are just a couple tips that I would say, but I think follow the instructions and make sure that right away that we see the best possible quality of what it is that you are and what you're doing.
Markand.
Okay, well, let me just add a few practical thoughts. Actually, following up on what Emily said about video bells and whistles at the beginning, not only is it not necessary, but to me it's a negative. It's like, what are you trying to prove? Just give me the straight dope. Personally, I prefer to see whole movements, although I rarely, if ever, find myself watching more than 2 or 3 minutes of a given piece. But I would prefer to see it there, because I may very well want to understand what's this person's sense of the structure of a work. I also think if they're cutting off something, what was bad about, what was wrong with the stuff that they're not showing me. However, I don't hold it against someone only has a video clip. That's a very minor point. Not such a minor point as a technical point. Make sure the video and the audio are in sync, because every so often they're not, and I can't. I don't watch that. I can't. There's nothing you can tell about that. And here's maybe a helpful hint. If you're putting it on YouTube, if it's very easy, if you mark the timings of the different clips, it'll just show up, and so someone can click to the next clip just by clicking on the timing. And that's really helpful, so that I would advise. However, if you're doing it on Decision Desk, enter separate videos, because you can't do that in the Decision Desk. Just some technical, practical hints.
Sure. Yeah, and I agree with Markand and Emily about, I think maybe the thing that you should think about is the quality, not only the quality of the video, but the quality of the music that you're presenting. So I like complete movements, And in many cases, I can tell very quickly in that movement. But again, like Markand said, I like sometimes if it's really interesting, I like a little bit more. I like to see what you're going to do with it. I usually like 2 performances and at least 1 rehearsal. And so with everything else that's said, my biggest thing is I learn a lot by what kind of music you submit, and what is it that you feel like, this is where I am, this is what I do, this is how I feel, this is the music that I can make now at this point, and I want to come and learn to do something else, but present music that you really believe in.
Can I add something? Just in the recent round of auditions for audition tapes for Peabody, there were a whole handful of people who I felt put possibly their worst clip first and their best clip at the end. And so if you have a chance to have an experienced eye look at your video, just to get someone else's view, it's probably a good idea.
Best foot forward, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
It's hard to know.
Sure. And one thing that struck me, Neal, you mentioned that leadership is a quality. It's hard to see leadership maybe in one of these videos, but in your process through the application, and then in your in-person interview, you said you were looking for somebody that possessed that quality as important for a conducting career. What are other qualities off the podium that you feel you're equipped with that have led you to success in an academic position of leadership? We talk about everything you have to do on the podium, but when you're a professor, you're working with students, you're figuring out how to be a good pedagogue, you're maintaining a budget, overseeing possibly an administrative staff, a team of graduate students, you have to write and research for promotion and tenure stuff, serving on committees, all these things that you probably didn't learn about in your master's program. So how did you develop those skills, and what did you find most useful to learn aside from what you were doing with your hands on the podium?
Well, happy to jump in. One of the things that I realize has been a joy for me to be involved in the academic world is that you have colleagues. You have colleagues in your department. In the professional conducting world, you don't have that quite the same way. And I think if a conductor at the university, in a university position, understands the value of that collaboration and how in every direction colleagues can enrich the education of students, that's already making a very good start. As you mentioned, there are just there are writing skills, there are analytical skills, there are people skills. If you're dealing with a tenured faculty in particular, you are dealing with people every day who you may be dealing with in the next 15 years, and that conditions the way you think about these relationships. So yes, I mean, I think for any ensemble director in a university, there's certainly a great amount of organizational capacity that you have to have. It's not as if we all have huge amounts of staff support. At least I don't. And I think you have to put pedagogy first. The main goal of conducting a university level orchestra, I think, is not putting on concerts. It's teaching people how to play in an orchestra. And that has to condition selection of repertoire, menu and balance of large ensemble, small ensemble, how people spend their time in all levels of the curriculum. So I think that, but I do think that the ensemble director brings a particular point of view to that discussion. We are the directors of musical groups that probably have the highest impact: opera, wind ensemble, orchestra, and we have a certain more global perspective, maybe, about the needs of our department than any one faculty member in a particular area. So I think ensemble directors at universities are critical and can take critical leadership roles just by virtue of the kinds of skills that they have in guiding faculty policy and in leadership roles within these schools.
Right, and we're looking for people that are going to be the future leaders, and I think we can tell, especially when we meet them. It's hard to tell in the video, but who's going to be the leader that's going to bring a lot of these things forward. But we talk about talent, we talk about students that work very, very hard and they're preparing this and everything. But a third element that I always look for in a student, especially when they come to campus, is what kind of person are they? Do they treat people well? And I think in our profession, it's changed over the last 100 years about how we actually treat our players and how we get the best music out of our players. I look for somebody that has the most talent, that works the hardest, and treats people the best. And it's kind of there are a lot of things that come off that pyramid that have a lot of other things to do. Do you sing well? Do you play? A lot of other components. But to me, a leader also can treat people well, and that's one of my kind of pet peeves, that you don't have to be a leader that is demanding. You can command your leadership and not be overbearing that way, and people will get along and they'll follow you, they'll learn from you, and that's what I look for in a student, because I think you can see it, especially when you meet them. Are they able to establish this, and is it something that you can work with?
I'd like to add a few things. So I agree completely with what Mark said and Neal said. So these are some things to add on top of it. Along with what Neal said, I think being organized, I want to just touch on that again. Being really, really organized is one of the best qualities, because there's so many different things to manage, and I think the more competent you prove to be to an organization, the more duties they will give you. So the better you can manage and be organized is really, really helpful. I think time management is really, really critical. I think especially time management for your students, for your colleagues, whenever you're leading meetings or doing events, that you're again organized, but also thinking about everyone's time. Even in my own rehearsals, I try to stick to a really rigid schedule so my students know exactly what to expect, because I value their time. I also think that whatever job you have, I think you have to remember what your job is, and you're there to serve. A lot of times, I think maybe it's different for professional conductors, that they can have a little bit of their own agenda with programming and so forth. I think in academia, we have to remember that we're there to serve our students, we're there to serve our colleagues. If there's an agenda or a mission statement within the College of Music, if the institution has some visions, that we have to really serve those folks. Maybe can you hear Penelope in the back?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's adorable.
Oh, very sweet. Well, it's sleeping time. And I also think, what we're doing to serve our community, of course, is also important. Do everything you can to be positive. There are plenty of days where things get pretty rough, but I think we all have to try to do what we can to have a positive disposition and moving forward. I think we have to be flexible. I think we have to be level-headed and non-emotional as much as possible in our reactions and interactions. I think we have to be creative and think outside the box. And I think the best thing we can do for ourselves now is try to find ways to save money, to find creative things that are free, that are attached to, things that won't cost a university a lot of money. So those are just some brass tacks bullet points that I wanted to add to what both Neal and Mark had said.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just add, if in terms of making a professional career, there's a whole slew of assets that come into play, and nobody has them all, but specifically, writing skills are very important. Speaking skills, especially speaking to audiences, speaking to board members, speaking to the media, that's really critical skill. And I think on a somewhat different note, if you want to make a career, the best thing you can have is persistence, because you're going to be told no infinitely more times than you'll be told yes.
Patience, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I thought it was interesting that almost everyone in their answer to that question brought up an issue of collegiality, of interacting with those around you in a positive way, and in service. And one of the things I wanted to ask everybody was that, like, how did you find service impacting your career in good ways? One of the ways is through the Conductors Guild, and I'm contractually obligated by Amanda Winger to mention how the Conductors Guild is one of the things that allows conductors to serve by allowing others into their circle. In some cases, I've worked with many of the people on this panel as a student when they taught a workshop. That's something that we've found is good for both the students and the teachers. And also just at a national and sometimes international level, it's expected of you in a professorship to advance your field in a pertinent way for those other people in your field. So could you tell us about some of the ways that you found service an international community, a group like the Conductors Guild, is either helping your career or finding it rewarding to help the organization?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Well, I'll start.
I guess
go
that's a
ahead.
good question.
Yeah, go ahead, Markand.
Sure. I've been fortunate to have been faculty at some Conductors Guild supported workshops, and I mentioned that the two programs that I run annually, that the Conductors Guild is kind enough to put the word out to the community, and it's an umbrella organization. It's a clearinghouse. I think Neal might have touched on this, but conducting is a very lonely business. You're alone. It's a very small space at the top of that island, and so to have an opportunity to communicate with colleagues, with mentors, with mentees. I think it's a wonderful service. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. We have every other year we do the Frederick Fennell Memorial Masterclass in conjunction with the Conductors Guild, and it's always really fabulous. We have a great time, have great students, and it's always very, very well run. Other places that we find in our area that we can do services. I just finished as president of the Eastern Division of CBDNA, which is the College Band Directors National Association. Being active in that, and being active in WASB, and maybe even getting in touch with a school abroad. Like I'm a kind of a permanent guest conductor in the Kunitachi School of Music in Tokyo, and those kind of connections where you can you feel like you can share. I mean, that's one of the things I think that is most important about the Conductors Guild, is how we can share and support each other. Because I agree with Markand. It's a little bit of a singular existence. It can be, where you think, well, okay, but in the old school view of that is it's us against them, and it's not that way anymore. And I know that that's not what that is. It's just like we spend so much time with ourselves and prepare, and then we're with a group of people. That's why we got in the business, isn't it? Or we got in this business is we love being with people. So that's one of those balances that you have to do, and I think that that's where some of these associations, especially Conductors Guild, can really come in handy, and it's very rewarding and satisfying. Thank you.
Who's next? I'll be next. I think that all the opportunities that conductors who are learning their craft have to participate in workshop sessions, to meet their peers who are going through the same thing, to learn from people who've been at this a while. Those are so valuable, and they're not, they're not that many of them. So it's certainly the fact that the Conductors Guild maintains this very busy schedule of them. It used to be also the American Symphony Orchestra League when it was called that, but now it's really been taken over by the Conductors Guild. And we were able to do a very interesting workshop a couple of years ago here at UCLA about concerto accompanying. That was, I think, very valuable for everybody involved. So yeah, as much of that as we can do as conductors, and as much as our students can get feedback from a variety of sources, other than their principal teacher, of course, that's completely golden.
Yeah.
I'll say a few words, and I will apologize if my daughter does cry in the background. So I think very early in my career, I got involved with Conductors Guild, CBDNA, WASB, and workshops, conducting workshops. And that has been nothing but incredibly valuable, because it has built a base of colleagues, young colleagues that were just emerging with myself. It connected me with mentors, and it just got me to know, get closer and closer to different communities. And as a wind person, the Conductors Guild has been incredibly valuable, because it's something a little different than just a band conference or band organization. So it's opened my own horizons to different conferences, different points of view, different issues. So I think it's just a service to yourself for growth, to get involved in as many professional organizations that you can afford to do and that you have time to do, because it will serve you immediately, and also, I think, long term, by building all kinds of connections with peers and mentors down the road.
Right, that's how you and I first met.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and just on a personal note for me as well, this rings very, very true, because I'm on the beginning stages of my career, but I feel like I have a good network of friends that I've met through the Conductors Guild. Some of them are going to be mentor-mentee relationships, some of them as peers, but as Markand said, in this business, the nature of it is that you're going to fail a lot more than you succeed. And the failures are a little bit easier to swallow when it's one of your friends getting that job or winning that competition or something. And it's so nice to feel supported by a network of others when you achieve those successes. So I would just think that the Conductors Guild is such a blessing in many, many ways to connect a rather disparate profession and really form a network of support for those looking to pursue it as a career. So I only have the very best things to say about the organization as well, and thank you to everyone else for their thoughts. We just have enough time for everybody maybe to give a 60-second closing remark, or just give a last thought to the conversation. So why don't we start with you, Neal, and go through in the order that we did the introductions and kind of wrap things up.
Well, thank you very much for getting us together for this. I mean, this has really been very interesting for me to hear perspectives from other campuses and from colleagues. We should do a lot more of it, I think. It's a daunting profession to get into, I think, for any young person. I think they appreciate very much. I've begun to see a sympathetic ear, and as much time as someone who is in kinds of positions we're in are able to offer them in terms of advice. Yeah, it's these are very small programs. There's a lot of competition for them. It has to be the right fit. The orchestra player in the major orchestra never tells you about all the auditions that they didn't succeed in. Everybody has those experiences, but if you have a clear vision, believe in yourself, make great music as much as you can at all times with great musicians, you'll be fine. It'll be a rich way to live.
But you won't get rich.
That's true.
Yes.
Maybe tonight, though. I don't. Did anybody play the Powerball? I don't know.
So to piggyback on what Neal said, I think you just have to be really patient. And I think if you really love what you do and you love teaching and you love working with people, that will come across. You have to be patient. Start small. Make small local groups great, and don't feel like you have to be in a big fancy institution or in front of the best the best ensemble. Make the group that you have in front of you the best it can be. And I think also to just be thankful if you have a job in music at any level, teaching or performing, to just be grateful for that, because there are a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and if you can be a musician, I think you're incredibly lucky. So, but I think also patience too, and hard work and finding the right fit, all of that. It's a combination of all of these things. So, I've been incredibly grateful to have all the opportunities that I've had, and every time I get one, I do the best I can, and I work super duper hard to try to make sure that I do a good job. So that's all I have to add.
Well, I must say I'm really inspired. I'm glad to have participated. One thought I just have, we've discussed the audition process, and I know frankly from being on both sides of it, now being on the judging side and having to tell people, no, you're rejected, it's very easy for that to feel like a black and white decision, and that and it ultimately is a black and white. Either you succeed or you don't succeed. But it's easy for that to feel like some kind of judgment, and it's not. These decisions are often coin flips. They're often wrong. They often depend on who's doing the judgment or the particular day. So just take the whole process in stride and be thankful when they tell you yes.
Yeah, again, I'm very grateful, too, for all of this and actually meeting all of you. And John, thank you very much. And Amanda, thank you very much for putting this together. One final thought that I have is I see an awful lot of young, talented conductors that move very well. Great movements and well-rehearsed and this and that. But as we're talking tonight about basically instrumental conducting, I want you to look past that and think that conducting is conducting. And I think a lot of instrumental conductors need to sing a lot more, and they need to be willing to do that. So if you don't feel comfortable with your voice, I mean, this is my big thing, is if you can't sing it, you can't conduct it. And so and you can start now, and it's just like piano too. Piano is a little bit harder to start later in your life, but singing, you've got your instrument with you at all times, and you can use it in rehearsal very effectively. But singing engages you in the music that you want to make, and it will empower your hands to do the right things. I'm a big inside-out person, that if you sing and you hear something, your hands are going to do the right things. So my suggestion to you is, if you don't do a lot of singing and you want to be an instrumental conductor, if you want to be a choral conductor, you better be a singer, right? But if you don't, two things: join a really good choir in your area. Just join a choir, or take voice lessons. Those two things a lot of people don't even think of as an instrumental conductor. I think they're crucial. They're so important, and they will benefit you the rest of your life in a really great way, because singing is everything, I have to say. Thank you again for listening to me, and it's great to meet everybody tonight.
Great. Well, we promised everybody an hour, and we're just 1 minute over, which I'll consider a success. On behalf of the Conductors Guild, thank you to our panelists tonight for giving of your time to this initiative. And for those of you in the audience, be on the lookout for episode number 3 of our Google Hangouts. We'll be bringing that to you in the near future. And if you joined us late tonight, this recording will be archived and available on YouTube at the same link shortly after the session is over. So feel free to check back in, or even watch it again if you'd like to take some notes on the information that was presented. So thank you to Amanda Winger, our Executive Director, and again, one more time, our panelists, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.